Previously, we have talked about the structure of the uterus, that is the part of internal genitalia, and in our today's lecture, we will talk about the supporting ligaments of the uterus, the uterine tubes, structure of the uterine tubes, ovaries, and the structure of the ovaries. So, these are the objectives of our today's lecture. The first topic that we are going to study is the supporting structures of the uterus. So, as you know that the uterus is lying within the pelvic cavity, so definitely it will need the supporting structures to keep it in place. And these are the organs, the surrounding organs, the muscles of the pelvic floor that we have already discussed, and the ligaments that will suspend it from the walls of the pelvis, and we will discuss these ligaments today. So the major or the very first ligament that we are going to discuss is the broad ligament. Okay, in this image we are looking at the uterus from the interior aspect, and this one is the axial section. So the first ligament that we are going to discuss is the broad ligament, this one. This broad ligament, as you can see, is covering the uterine tubes. First of all, let me tell you about the structures that you can appreciate. This is the uterus. These are the ovaries on each side, and these are the uterine tubes. So this broad ligament will cover this upper part of the uterine tube as well, which is not drawn in this figure, but remember that this broad ligament will cover this upper free border as well. So the first point is how this broad ligament is formed. So these will be lying on each side, not on this side only. This will be on other side as well. So the broad ligament is formed by a double fold of peritoneum, one on each side of the uterus, and they hang down from the uterine tubes. As you can see, they are hanging down from the uterine tubes like a drap, and at their lateral walls, these will be the lateral walls or the lateral ends, they will be attached to the each side of the pelvis. So once again, they are draping over the uterine tubes, hanging down from the uterine tubes, and at their lateral ends they are attached to the pelvis or the pelvic cavity. The uterine tubes, as you can see, these broad ligaments are covering or enclosing the uterine tubes. The upper free border will be enclosed in the broad ligament, and the lateral ends of the uterine tubes will penetrate the posterior wall of the broad ligament, and they will open into the peritoneal cavity. The ovaries, as you can see, are attached to the posterior wall of the broad ligament, and the major function of this broad ligament is the passage of the blood, lymph vessels, and the nerves to the uterus and the uterine tubes. So the major blood vessels, lymph vessels, and the nerves will pass between the layers of the broad ligaments to the uterus and the uterine tubes. Once again, we have talked about the broad ligament, and we have said that this broad ligament is enclosing the upper free border of the uterine tube, and the lateral ends of the uterine tubes are penetrating through the posterior wall of the broad ligament, and they will open into the peritoneal cavity. This broad ligament will be attached to its lateral ends to the pelvis, the ovaries will be attached to the posterior wall of the broad ligament, and the function of this broad ligament is basically to pass the major blood vessels, lymph vessels and nerves to the ovaries and the uterine tubes through the different layers of the broad ligament. The next ligament that we are going to discuss is the round ligament, and here you can appreciate the round ligaments. And the round ligament is basically the band of fibrous tissue between the two layers of the broad ligament that will also be lying one on each side, and they will pass to the sides of the pelvis. Then they will pass through the inguinal canal, and they will end by fusing with the labia majora. I hope that you are familiar with the inguinal canal that we have previously discussed in our lectures. Once again, this is the round ligament, and this is basically a band of fibrous tissue that will be lying between the two layers of the broad ligament, and that will be present just like the broad ligament on both sides, and they will pass to the sides of the pelvis. Then through the inguinal canal they will end by fusing with the labia majora. The next ligament is the uterosacral ligament, and this is also called the cardinal ligament. Here you can appreciate the cardinal ligament, and we can appreciate better in the axial section. The uterosacral ligament originates from the posterior walls of the cervix and the vagina, as you can see here, that these are originating from the posterior walls of the cervix and the vagina, and they are extending backwards, one on each side. They are extending backwards, one on each side of the rectum to the sacrum. Once again, we are talking about the uterosacral ligament, and you can see this is the cervix, and we are at the level of the cervix, and anteriorly is the bladder and posteriorly is the rectum. And we said that the uterosacral ligament is originating from the posterior walls of the cervix and the vagina, and it is extending backwards, one on each side of the rectum, and then it is extending to the sacrum. This is the rectum, and posteriorly to the rectum will be the sacrum. That's why we are calling it the uterosacral ligament. Next we have the transverse cervical ligament, that is also called cardinal ligament. Uterosacral is not the cardinal ligament. I think I have previously said that the uterosacral ligament is called the cardinal, but the transverse cervical ligament is the one that is also called the cardinal ligament, and these extend one from each side of the cervix and vagina to the sides of the pelvic walls. These are the cardinal ligaments, or the transverse ligaments, transverse cervical ligaments. So you can see that these are extending one from each side of the cervix and vagina to the sides of the pelvis, because they are traveling transversely, so that's why we are naming them as the transverse cervical ligament. So there are two cardinal ligaments. Lastly, we will talk about the pubocervical fascia. And this will extend from the transverse cervical ligament on each side of the bladder, and it will be attaching to the posterior surface of the pubic bone. As you can see here, that this will be extending forward from the transverse cervical ligament on each side of the bladder. This is the level of the bladder, and they will be attaching them to the posterior surface of the pubic bones. Interior to the bladder will be the pubic bones. Now we will talk about the uterine tubes. And the uterine tubes, that are also called fallopian tubes, are approximately 10 centimeter long, and they extend from the sides of the uterus between the body and the fundus. If we look at our previous image, then you can see here that this is the fundus of the uterus and this is the body of the uterus, and the fallopian tubes, as you can see, are extending from the sides of the uterus between the body and the fundus. And we have discussed this as well, that they lie in the upper free border of the broad ligament, and at their lateral ends they will penetrate the posterior wall to open into the peritoneal cavity. These are the ends of the uterine tubes, and you can see that here you can find the finger-like projections, and we call them the ovarian fimbria. The fimbria, and the longest one will be the ovarian fimbria. Another very important point about the fallopian tube is that each part has its distinct functions. So if we talk about the fimbria, that are the finger-like projections, these are, as you can see, are ciliated projections. They basically, the function of the fimbria is to capture the ovum from the surface of the ovary. As you know that the function of the ovary is to produce ovum, and these, as you can see, these are in a very close association with the ovaries. So these fimbria will capture the ovum from the surface of the ovary when the ovary will release the ovum. Then if we talk about the infundibulum, then as you can see, the shape of the infundibulum is funnel shaped, and each fimbria are attached to the infundibulum. Then if we talk about the ampulla, which is the widest section of the uterine tubes, and function of the ampulla is the fertilization. This is the part where the fertilization will occur. Next is the isthmus, and this is the narrow section of the uterine tube, and the function of the isthmus is to connect the ampulla to the uterine cavity. So each part of the uterine tube has its own distinct function. Now we will talk about the structure of the uterine tube, and the main function of the uterine tubes is to assist in the transfer and the transportation of the ovum from the ovary to the uterus, that I have already explained. And the inner mucosa of the uterine tube is lined with the ciliated columnar epithelium, and they will move the ovum towards the uterus, and they also supply it with the nutrients. There will be the PEG cells non-ciliated secretory cells. You don't have to remember this, just remember the epithelium, that is the ciliated columnar epithelium, and the function of the inner mucosa is to move the ovum towards the uterus and to supply it with the nutrients. Then comes the smooth muscle layer that will definitely contract to assist the ovum with the transportation, and it not only will transport the ovum, but it will transport the sperm as well. So that's all for the uterine tubes. And once again, if we talk about its parts, then starting with the fimbria, these are the finger-like projections. Then comes the infundibulum, that is the funnel-shaped opening near the ovary to which the fimbria are attached. Then the next part is the ampulla, and this is the widest section of the uterine tubes, and the fertilization will occur here. Next is the isthmus, which is the narrow section of the uterine tubes connecting the ampulla to the uterine cavity. Next, we have the arterial supply of the uterine tubes as well. In your book, they haven't mentioned the blood supply of the uterine tubes, but we will discuss about it. And the blood supply of the uterine tube is basically through the uterine and the ovarian arteries, and the venous drainage will be through the uterine and the ovarian veins. Next, we will talk about the ovaries, and ovaries are really very important, and these are the female gonads, the glands that will produce the sex hormones and the ovum, and by position they lie in a shallow fossa on the lateral walls of the pelvis. They are approximately 2.5 to 3.5 centimeter long, 2 centimeter wide, and 1 centimeter thick, and each is attached to the upper part of the uterus by the ovarian ligament, and to the back of the broad ligament by a broad band of tissue, that is the mesovarium. Mesovarium is very important because this is the part of the broad ligament that is associated with the ovaries, and it will project from the posterior surface of the broad ligament, and this basically encloses the neurovascular supply, and through this the blood supply will be coming to the ovaries. If we talk about the structure of the ovaries, then it has 3 parts: the medulla, cortex, and we will not consider the follicles in this. Just remember that it has 2 parts. We will not consider the surface in it, as it is not mentioned in your book, but through the histological features, if we talk about the histological features of the ovary, then each ovary has 3 main histological features: the surface, cortex, and medulla. But in your book they have mentioned cortex and medulla only. So the surface is basically formed by the simple cuboidal epithelium, and the next is the cortex, and this is comprised of connective tissue and the numerous ovarian follicles, and each follicle contains an oocyte that will be surrounded by a single layer of follicular cells. Just remember that when a female ovulate at 14 days, then each follicle will release an egg that will be ready to get fertilized, and if fertilization does not occur, then the menstruation will occur by 28 days. I am talking about a normal 28-day menstruation cycle. Next, we will talk about the medulla. And the medulla is formed by the loose connective tissue, and this is the part that is rich in neurovascular network. So once again, by the histological features, there are three main parts of the ovary: the surface, cortex, and the medulla. The surface is basically comprised of simple cuboidal epithelium. The next is the cortex, and this is comprised of connective tissue and the numerous ovarian follicles that I have already told you that each follicle contains an oocyte surrounded by a single layer of follicular cells, and each follicle will be released by the ovary at 14th day, and it will occur in a normal 28-day cycle. अगर किसी फीमेल में मेंस्ट्रुएशन 30 डे पे हो रही है या फिर 32 डे पे हो रही है, डिपेंडिंग ऑन द साइकिल, देन वी विल ऐड द डेज इन द ओव्यूलेशन. सो फॉर एग्जांपल इन 28 डेज अगर आपके पास ओव्यूलेशन 14 डेज पे हो रही है, बट इन अ 30-day पीरियड if a woman releases an egg, then that would happen on 16 day. We will add 2 days in a normal 14-day ovulation, and each follicle will be released in the follicular phase by the ovaries. Next, we will talk about the ligaments of the ovaries, and there are basically two ligaments that attach to the ovary. The suspensory ligament of the ovary, that is a fold of peritoneum extending from the mesovarium to the pelvic wall, and this contain the neurovascular structure. Next we have the ligament of the ovary, this one, and it extends from the ovary to the fundus of the uterus. Here will be the fundus of the uterus, and it then continues from the uterus to the connective tissue of the labia majora as the round ligament of the uterus. Next, I have some questions for you, and the first question is, the fallopian tube is comprised of 4 parts as we have discussed. So which part will be located most medially? Fimbria, ampulla, isthmus, or infundibulum? So the right answer is option C, the isthmus. As you can see here, this is small medially, this is lying medial because this is more nearer to the uterus. Next question is, which of the following provides the blood supply to the fallopian tubes? And I have already told you that the ovarian and the uterine arteries will supply the blood to the fallopian tubes. So the vaginal artery is the wrong option, pudendal and rectal as well, and the right option will be the ovarian arteries. And if we talk about the blood supply of the ovaries, then we already know that the main arterial supply to the ovary will be through the ovarian arteries, and the ovarian arteries arise directly from the abdominal aorta, and the venous drainage will be by the ovarian veins. Remember, this is very important point, that the left ovarian vein will drain into the left renal vein, while the right ovarian vein will drain directly into the inferior vena cava. This is very important, that the left ovarian vein will drain into the left renal vein, while the right ovarian vein will directly drain into the inferior vena cava. So that's all for today, and if you have any question regarding this lecture, then you can ask. Thank you so much.